Hello everyone, Kenty Tiger here with Bengali Engineering and Play. We are back in the Last Caretaker. We are sitting here, if you remember from last episode, we have actually just transited from the other docking platform over here to the kind of reception platform, I guess. So this kind of looks like a waiting room and all that sort of thing. So what we did was we docked. We went over here and got the buoy, the materials in the buoy, which reminds me I should probably drop off the materials that I gathered, and I restarted the game. So it's kind of one of those you gotta do it. So we'll drop off our iron, even though yeah, we're down to. So I guess I'm picking up iron. So I need iron and plastic. So I'm going to go ahead and sort these guys, mostly because this is probably what we acquired from over there. So we're going to go ahead and I don't honestly know how much I still need. So let's go ahead and pull in a bunch of these. It's going to over encumber me, but it's, I want to say, worth it. Here's a 41 over here. And the reason I'm doing this is I have no idea how many more extenders I'm going to need. So it's kind of one of those preemptive things that there is going to be some inconvenience here. So we'll go ahead and sort these materials where they're going. So this should be plastic and rubber. This one is going to be fabrics, which I do have quite a bit of fabric here. I think this is full. Yeah, this is full. So glass is up here, which we'll put here. I did have aluminum, which we can put in here. So I've got a good, healthy amount of aluminum, which is grand. That's full. This one is probably also full. Yeah. Which means we're actually going to be in this one to drop one. Okay, so we currently have, let's consolidate here. We currently have 345 oil hoses, fuel hoses, I guess I'll say. So we should be good, but don't know. So, as you remember from the last episode, I oscillated back and forth quite a bit whether I want to do petrol or go ahead and use that the line that was originally going to be petrol as diesel. And I really think pulling diesel off this platform is the better choice. I suppose in the ideal world where I would have the ultimate flexibility in design, I would pull all three. Because I need to get oil onto the platform, but I have no use for diesel on this platform, but I do have a use for diesel in the ship, which means pulling that diesel off and putting it on the ship rather than creating it, creating the tanks, creating it is... Because creating the little tanks, the small tanks, ultimately is a loss of materials. So it takes you certain resources to make those. You do not get those resources back, which seems kind of weird because when the tank is empty, most tanks don't destroy themselves when they empty, so you can refill most. So that's kind of a weird thing, but it is what it is. I'm not sure why the devs, thought to do that. To me, even if it is only an output device, I follow that. But maybe just have it so it goes inert. It's dead, it's done. But you can grind it down for the same materials that you put into it. I'm not sure why the differential there. Probably because you can find those in game anywhere. So I don't know. And it's really about the resources, not the materials that you're making it out of. So anyway, what we got here is we only have the shore power cable. So So this is again right back to we are tying up. We are creating 20 different action items that could be applicable at any moment for a single key. So in this case, we've just tied shore power onto the ship, which is now drawing from the really immense battery power that's available from the ship, and taking it onto the station here. So not sure why that is not working unless my solar panels have come disconnected for some reason. So this is my diesel input, this is my oil output. So in this case, I really want to tie the diesel on here and be able to bring and wow, that buoy respawned really quickly. So we were talking. I was talking about the flashing. So you can see it. It normally sits red, which I didn't actually realize it was steady red. And then the flashing green. So the flashing green really does tell you that you have not visited this yet. So as long as they're flashing green, and you won't see the solid red for very long because they sink. So that means you have collected all the loot and you're on your own. All right, so what we're going to do is go in. We really just need to bring... All right. I guess these are just not producing because it's night. So hopefully those are okay and really will be producing. So for whatever reason, these were strained because these are running. So 1 megawatt. So the electric cables have a limit of 2 megawatts. So if you're really stressing these things, they'll run at 2, but unless they change that. All right, in the door, we'll go up the elevator and get onto that upper platform, and then we'll have to come down a bit. I always close these doors because the critters can come in otherwise. Well, that was my experience at first. The last 2 times, well, 3 including this one, that I have been back to this platform, there have not been any respawned anythings. Usually you end up with the pink blobs and stuff that will come back. So you might notice there's something here. So this does take you to the upper platform. So basically the catwalk comes up to that platform, and I've already gone down 1 platform, I believe it is. So we do have another so I think this is the platform that I've gotten to, yeah. You can see the extenders there. So we effectively have to go back down to that level of the platform, and then ultimately we're gonna have to retrace our steps and figure out which one is what. So E to get us onto the platform and hopefully not fall off the ladder. And then going down to the platform here, and this is where we stopped. Oh, I am incorrect. We stopped up here because we had attached on and did not have enough cable. Did not have enough hose. So the idea here is even on the ladder, in many cases you can connect onto something and build. So you can certainly build the extenders as you're on a ladder. You have a certain amount of look angle, not very much. But in this case, you can see the reticle, you can see the roundy on the connector that you are intending to connect through, connect to. So this is, that's an E, which is now connecting. So now it's S to go down, which we now should have plenty of cable to get to the bottom and restring everything that we could not before. Alright, so we are going to connect to this one here, so I get my reticle close. I can see a bit of roundy. So now that is connected in there as I intended it to be connected. This one over here, we kind of got to figure out what we're going to do here. So I guess we're just... So technically we could just go right straight on the platform. E for enter. And we'll just go down with it. These are not going to be pretty because there's just really no way to be pretty for this one. So we can see 12 meters here. So what I'm going to do is, even though it's kind of off to the side, I'm going to go ahead and put it over here anyway. So that's an E to fabricate, Q to turn off, and then E to connect. So that is whichever one that is, and ultimately we're going to go over here. So we're going to follow these over here. So I'll go ahead and do that for the sake of doing it while we're here. I don't know if it'll let me do this, so I'm going to just drop the cable right there. I'm going to jump over this. I'm going to attempt to jump over this and see if I can crouch down and reach the cable. Yep, so it is. So sometimes the line of sight thing is it drags it through the railing, you know, at the line of sight, and I really kind of despise that. So, you know, going through the lowest place that it can possibly go. Okay, 13 meters here. So we'll fabricate the extender, get it as close as we can. Q to turn that off. Connect. We'll actually create, so let me borrow this. Create Q to turn that off. We'll connect, and then we'll do kind of the same thing in this direction, the other direction here. So the downside is it's going to be a little harder to connect through. So we will... So fabricate connector. We're going to go ahead and let it may not let me do that fashionably. Yeah, so we will do an E to create, Q to turn that off, and then an E to connect. And then this one will come down on the opposite side because it's on this side, so it'll kind of be just hanging out here in the world, and we'll connect right onto that. So that's the idea there. Okay, so unfortunately we can either go up or go down. It really doesn't matter, so we might as well. I've got to traverse this effectively twice anyway, so we will scale up holding the hose. You do have a bit of view that you can utilize here. We're going to go to the right, and we're going to connect onto this guy. Okay, so if everything went well, then that because we're just going to waste cable. All right, back down the ladder. So those are comfortably connected in. Now the problem with spaghetti is finding the end of one noodle versus the other noodle is sometimes challenging. So this is where this particular aspect of not having color-coded cables becomes very, very frustrating for those who are somewhat OCD. Now why it does this, I really don't know. So apparently that's just in the venue of where that happens to be. So rather than, you know, taking up the tension, they probably changed the methodology in which all these are tensioning, which makes sense. Alright, so we're going to do the same thing over here. Very likely we will actually stagger here on the diagonal, mostly because it works. So we'll get this as close as we can get it, and maintain the diagonal. Q to turn that off, E to connect, E to connect, and then we'll go back this way. Connect. Ultimately we go forward here, so E to connect. A little more challenging as we're getting close to the edge, so when we start changing, this is going to conflict with the power cable, but we're going to go for it. So what I have to do is Q and drop. So we drop the image there. We're going to drop that. We're going to disconnect this for just a moment, let that res in fully, reconnect, grab our line here and actually connect. Alright, now we're going to end up with the same little problem here. So I probably wisdom says drop. Well, let me use this as my cheater. Fabricate. We'll go right up to here, get it as close to the edge as we can. Q to turn that off. This one is actually connecting onto this one, and this one is connecting onto this one. We will, we used to call it hand over hand. So the concept is when you have, 50 cables in a cableway, you're literally pulling that cable that you're tracing out hand over hand to discover where it is. So we're going to have to do that to make sure that we are, in fact, following everything. So we'll do this one at a time, unfortunately. Right over the edge. And we're going to put these pretty close to the surface, but I am going to drag them off to the side, so we do have some clipping of the cables over here because I don't want them in front of the doorway. So we'll go ahead and do this. We'll do first one and then the other. So we'll get these as close together as we can possibly get them. Q to turn off the shadow creation, and this one is that one. Okay, now of course is the challenge of getting back up there. How do you get back up there? Well, unfortunately you do indeed have to go out and around because I don't have anything I could jump up on. Normally I would be able to jump up to this, but I don't have anything I can stand on, so I took it all away. So unfortunately, I do have to go all the way out and around, recall the thing, and then jump my way down. When you're doing one cable, it's not a big deal, but when you're doing two, and then of course we'll just bring it around the edge and down the center dock over here, and then we'll be there. And then we just have to figure out what is what. And the reason I put an auxiliary tank, which is expensive, you've got an extra tank laying around, is specifically so it can identify, obviously, oh, okay, this is going to the diesel, this is going to the oil. So it's expensive in terms of resources because now it's an extra tank that you wouldn't probably put in otherwise, but it does make something that's absolutely obvious. So I only have to hand over hand that once. All right. So I saved myself a little bit by leaping off, and I thought that was not going to work, but it did. All right, so I think we did take the correct one and move the right one over to the right side. I think we did. All right, so connect. We're going to leap down to the first, leap down to the second, and then connect on over here. I'm trying to pull it off that light and get it to... But of course, why would it do that? Alright, oh well. Sometimes it really does stupid things. Okay, so I brought these into the corner, so I guess I could do something similar again, even though I did not stagger these appropriately. So I guess we'll create a triangle here just because. Alright, we'll grab the first one, which will become the corner. We're going to stagger this just slightly forward. Oh, darn. So there's that one, and we'll stagger this one to there. Oh, damn it. Ah, damn it. One key, one action. Or at least not have the actions change. Not, so that's the inside one. So all these are going to blur together to the point where you will not be able to tell which one they are. So this is, you know, which one's right, which one's left. So inside versus outside, which I think they work out okay. So all these, of course, are totally clipped together. Yep. Alright, so I think those are okay as long as I remember which one's right and which one's left. Should be alright. So I know this was the inside, this was the outside, so that should be alright. Should be alright. Now I could come to the corner, or I could do the offset stagger thing again, which is, I'm gonna have to go over 2 of the lines here, so it really kind of doesn't matter. Alright, so we'll do this. Again, looks a little ugly, but, you know, cable management, it's the finest. Alright, not perfect. Q to turn that off. I want to look and see, so I'm on the inside one there, which means I'm going to the inside one here. And this one goes across to this one. So there's 2 methodologies of testing. One is to just hand over hand from end to end, which is time consuming. The other is we literally hook the thing up, and if it flows, you know you got the right tank at the other end. If it does not, then you change. So, crisscross. So I guess we've crisscrossed anyway. We probably should keep that same methodology. All right, so we'll do the stagger here just to keep them very close together. Which one is this? This is. We'll continue. We'll call this one the left. So as I change, it becomes the right. Right. As I change my orientation here. So this is this one. E to connect because I think I have the right one. Yep. And it's clipping right through the electric, but that's fine. And then this one will come down here. And there. So in the grand scheme of things, ideally would be I put 2 tanks over here. So we'll put a diesel tank and a petrol tank, a diesel tank and the oil tank, which would readily identify what these things are connected to. Now, arguably, I could do the same thing on the other side because I came down over here already, but it was kind of the idea of I'm going here because I know all my connections are on the front of the boat, so I should put them here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then ultimately we'll plumb in here. But we need to build those tanks. We have the resources here on the ship, so we will go below decks and do that. All right, so that filled up pretty nicely. We probably need to pull more stuff out of there and let those fill, but we can do that underway. Okay, so we need a diesel tank because I did decide it's more practical to have a diesel. So we will diesel add all parts to Q, and we have an oil tank add all parts to Q. So that's going to take a couple seconds to do that, but again, it is what it is. If we had a means to move, we have a means to move diesel, which is great, and that's originally that's exactly why I plumbed the diesel into the fabricator, so I could carry the diesel off the platform because there's no use for it on this platform. So using it in the boat, however, you do have a legitimate need to use it in the boat. So in this case, this just makes it a bit easier because I literally hook up lines, and if I have to, I can, pull off, whatever diesel is left up there. So I can still use the fabricator and create these diesel containers, but, in this case, it just gives me a little better option. I actually have, I think, 2 tanks worth of diesel. So let me, while that's doing, that's going to take a minute. I think I have 2. So I have all but 1 in the diesel. So this is my the proverbially ready. So there's 9 in here, and these are just ones that I've, I go to a platform and hey, there's a diesel can. So I grab it. I don't have any need for it because I'm right now I'm using the diesel pretty efficiently, all things considered. So I'm not terribly worried about having the diesel stored. But so there's diesel here. So there's 9 here, which are just collected as I've gone along, and I think I've gone to. So I've got some habitats left, but other than that, I don't. So then I have, which is why it's kind of diesel colored, and I've got 20 here. So I basically have 2 tanks worth of diesel right here. So if for whatever reason I end up, now you can't really get stranded because you have an electric engine. So you may be going slow, but you're going to go somewhere. So this is kind of just my redundant military planning that just, you never lose that. Once you get that redundancy mindset in, always have an oops factor built in. Any mission plan, any war plan, you always have an oops factor. So you build that in. This happens to be, half of it. So ultimately I have 3 tanks worth of diesel that are just sitting here. Now it'll take some time to get them out of here, but, in the end, they're here. That's what they're here for. And this is power. So again, I've got a bunch of batteries, but it's available. So the idea is that I will never be in a situation where I will be stranded somewhere. And now I have enough tanks on the boat here that I've got a long distance that I can go. All right, back to below decks and grab all those parts, which I think are done. Looks like it. Laggy. And now just a bit over encumbered carrying all the parts for those 2 tanks. Kind of an interesting dynamic, because if you carry the materials and create it on your person, then you're not over encumbered. But when you carry the parts are somehow heavier. Heavier than the originals. All right, B, to get into this particular thing and whether we put the oil tank in the corner or the diesel tank. I think the diesel tank with the flat next to the flat will do that. So one of the tricks to remember is that these, for some reason, spawn in with the ports opposite you. So if you paste this down and think, oh, damn. So not sure why they did that, but. And I tried to get these as straight as I can, but because there's no snap to system, then it's a little bit challenging. And then understanding exactly where all the different parts and pieces are. So sometimes finding that proverbial sweet spot is a little challenging. All right, so I think I will just go with it here. This is probably as close. So this is an E to fabricate. We will do a Q to turn that off. We will go back into the build menu and grab the oil tank next. Here's the oil tank. Build. And then this also, it's kind of hard to see, but you can see the connection ports are in fact on the opposite side from you. So roll it around here to the front. Try to get it as aligned as I can. And then that one's still building. So I don't know exactly where that one is, but so if you point at the objects that's being built, you can actually see where it is in its percentage of being complete. So in this case, I'm going to let it complete because the collision boxes around the tanks are a bit wonky, but that's not fair. They're not really wonky, as they give you a lot of flexibility. So the hit box is actually inside the actual dimensions of the tank, which is to say you can actually paste tanks so they're overlapping one another to save a bit of space. All right, so that is about as straight as it can be, and it's whether I want it all the way back here against this bulkhead, which it will let me do. or bring it forward a little bit. And I think I'm going to bring it forward a little bit, and then get it semi-close to the tank. Alright, so this looks pretty good. Q to turn off those particular features. Alright, so from this guy, we're going to do a bit of strange stuff over here. How do we do this? So I think the best way to do this, and maybe yeah, we'll go. So what I'm going to do is grind this one down. Grab the, so turn that off. Grab the hose again, which is escaping. We'll use it to fabricate once again, and we'll actually bring this forward and offset. And the reason for that is we're going to go straight over sideways with these. So Q to turn that off, E to connect. So it's arbitrary, but because of where the oil tank is versus where the diesel tank, this one is going to become the oil tank. So what we'll do is go over here. We're going to, okay, sorry. We'll deal with the diesel tank first, which is deal with the one that's closest to the cement over here. Because otherwise I will not have a good idea. So the idea here is this one off the right will go to actually another extender that's on the deck. That way I don't have this angled hose going up. So E to fabricate. In this case, we're going to stagger just a little bit. And ideally would be I stagger over here. I'm going to crisscross pipe no matter what. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, because that way I'm not crisscrossing anywhere but, well, do I eliminate the crisscross? Ah, damn. What is this? Okay, so Q to turn that off, and then this goes here. This one will ultimately go here. So when I come over to the ship for the connectors, then these are going to crisscross there. Otherwise, they will not be crisscrossed anywhere, which is nice. So we'll put that there. So this becomes our diesel because it happens to be the first tank that's over here, and then the other one becomes the oil, but that's just kind of one of those. Okay, so we're going to build an extension here, an extender. We'll turn that one off. We'll go ahead and plug that one in there, and then this connects. Okay, so connect, and we have to watch exactly, because there's 80 different things attached to E, so it's only letting me connect fuel extender, which is what I wanted, and then onto the diesel tank. Alright. This one here is kind of the same thing, except coming over here to the oil tank. So we're going to create the extender, Q to turn that off. Once it reses in, we connect, and then we come to this side and connect onto the extender, and then onto the tank. Okay, so that pretty much connects all of this in, and the idea here is now we have an obviously identified, it goes here. Then we will bring these two guys over here. So this is our diesel, which just by virtue of where they are on the ship, this is my diesel connection, this is my oil connection. We're going to duplicate that here on the pier. So does it make perfect sense? Is it the best organized thing ever? Arguably no, because you still have crisscrossing pipes. So until we have the ability to actually go over and under and all that sort of thing with pipes, then we are going to see the clipping. So eventually my guess is that they will figure all that out. So this is our oil, which ultimately goes to the one on this side, and there it is. Alright, so in this case our diesel and our oil are interconnected if we figure out which one the diesel is, so I'm going to go ahead and connect that. So the diesel is actually pulling it off the ship here, which I don't actually want to do. Yeah, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. At this point, it does not matter. So basically, we're taking diesel off the ship to equalize, which ultimately I'm not going to want to do. But the good news is that I can figure out which one it is at the other end by connecting it onto the diesel. If I have flow, I know that is my diesel hose. All right. So now that we have plumbed all the way to this end, and remember we have not done that on the other end. Well, I don't think I did. I guess I did. So go back and then figure out what I connect onto, because I undid it off of, and the fact that I don't have any flow either means my diesel tanks are full. Turn the lights off. There are lights up there. Either my diesel tanks are full, which is very possible, or something's broken. In the easy to get to places, I don't mind so much that they're broken. It's frustrating, but you know, it's kind of one of those you can legitimately say it is what it is. But it's when you get into the tangles and you really have to trace and troubleshoot and figure out what's wrong with all this, that I really strongly believe that having color coded, and I mean, if you just say generic fuel cables, great. And then it changes color to what that fuel cable actually is, what it's carrying when you connect it onto something. So when you have something that's a device, a producer, or a tank, then boom, it becomes a diesel hose. And it changes color to that diesel hose, and then changes color all the way to the other end, whatever that end happens to be. So I'm a firm believer that, you know, color coding is very important. When you have flow, you know, so electricity is electricity. That's the only thing flowing through that cable. But your gas lines and your fuel lines, and in fact your water lines, have different substances that can go through them. So when they're actually flowing, then it's really obvious what's in them. But when it's not flowing, then you are left to guess. So and here's my contention. When you're troubleshooting, probably the reason you're troubleshooting is because stuff isn't flowing. Which means if it changes color, and even if it goes back to neutral because it's broken, then at least you know, oh, this is the section I gotta fix. So it's still convenient to have that color that tells you something is wrong, or that this is exactly how it should be. So hopefully, again, they will. There's been a lot of suggestions to the same, that there should be some color coding. I had proposed as a suggestion there in the Discord that there be universal hoses, that could be a mid to late game, that yeah, you have to create the electric cable and the fuel cable and the so what were the two? I guess it was fuel cable and electric, and eventually you can create the water, and eventually you can create the gas. But you know, my proposal was universal, and the reason I proposed universal is their electric is different, I accept, but all of the other hoses are made by rubber and plastic, and all the extenders are made by plastic and iron, which means they're already universal. It's just the color that, you know, is created at the time. So my guess is we will be able to reverse the hoses at this other end, and it will work. So I think I just happened to get them swapped, provided everything is still connected. If things have come loose on the catwalk down there, then that's the matter of we gotta troubleshoot. So we know the rocket is ready because we did that last episode. So that's the good news. So once we're done with our upgrades here to Exodus Station, we've already done a couple tours on Exodus Station. Not a whole lot has changed on Exodus Station. So really this was about the upgrades of getting the really the flexibility in the oil delivery. I suppose I really should change this one down here out to be diesel as well, because if I'm really not bringing petrol in, then why? Might as well swap it out, although one could make the argument that that still is an easy way to bring in both oil and diesel, or oil and petrol if I need it. So maybe the best argument to say is it's already done, so leave it. Now there is that opportunity. I just have to come to this particular dock, setup to bring in petrol if for whatever reason I need it. Otherwise, I would be docked at the other one, which does make sense to have diesel out there, because then I can just run the diesel into the boat at the same time I'm running oil off the boat. So, yeah. We could probably make the argument either way. So it looks like at least this end for the cables are still good. So we'll go up and see. There is absolutely the possibility that I just swapped them up there. And once I get them swapped, then they will function perfectly. So we know we have diesel on the boat. We know we have diesel on the at the tank, because we're equalizing to that tank there on the pier. So my guess is we go up here and we swap these cables, and the one, if everything's working correctly, we should have flow on the diesel. So we will just try that. We will grab this hose here and plug it in here, and poof, look at what happens. So that's our diesel, which means this one, even though that looks horrible, crisscross being what it is, but again, it is what it is. So eventually we will do the reverse there and make sure we pull all the diesel onto the boat, but for right now this is obviously going all the way to the end and filling. Now we don't have any more oil on the boat, so we can't really test this. Maybe I can just connect it in and see what happens. So we're kind of hand over handing here. This is still connected over the top, connected, going over here, all the way over here, and connecting in here. Now what I would have to guess is I'm either out of oil. Yeah, out of oil. I was going to say it might be the opportunity to test and see some plastic. Come on. Push and hold, but you got to do it. Okay. So the good news is that works. Now, we just ran 2 leads down there, 2 hoses down there. Presumably, if one works, the other one is also working, which means that should work. Unfortunately, I do not have any oil either here or on the boat to test. So, yeah, so that's that. On the good side is we definitely have a bunch of petrol here. So we're out of oil. but we are full of petrol here. We have oxygen is full. Oxygen is full. Methane is full. All right, so here's the downside. So this can produce oxygen, so it is. So this will continue running, continue burning fuel. Now, thankfully, because the methane is a solid connection, it is not bleeding any methane out, which means it is not running this. So this guy at least works as my expectation is if there is no draw for electricity, it shuts off. If there is no draw for CO2, it shuts off, which is exactly what it does. So the generators appear to function as would be expected. My expectation would be if the oxygen and methane are at 100%, it would shut down. Now, because you bleed oxygen into the air, it will just continue running forever. So this isn't really about, not really about the production there, because there's not a hard stop. It's venting that oxygen into the air, so it's still doing what it's supposed to be doing. But what I do like seeing in this case, the distillation tower shuts off because I don't have any oil. But what I fear is that my diesel tank fills up, my petrol tank fills up, and the distillation tower continues functioning, continues consuming oil, even though it's not producing anything. And that's what I've seen in the past. So what we'll do here, just for the sake of having done it, see, this is green. In my view of the world, this should be in standby because my diesels are full. Well, actually my diesels are not full now, but so I'm completely full of shit. But okay, so we'll turn that off to definitively keep that off. So in the end, we have a certain amount of diesel here which can go on the boat, and we have stopped flowing, which means the pure tank is full and the diesel tanks, have equalized, right? So what we'll have to do down at the pier is actually set to input or output and force everything onto the boat to fill the boat completely, and then everything that remains in the tanks will remain in the tanks. All right, so on the good side, we have done everything here at Exodus platform that we intended to do. So let's run down the list. I shot the mines, so I got rid of the mines. One of those mines, I think, respawned, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. The diesel tanks and the oil tanks were already built, so we connected in, had to do a bit of troubleshooting, and got the oil up here to the platform, even though we thought it was already running. But that's fixed. So we know we have petrol up here, and we have oil coming up from this platform, this one back here. Now, the real discussion point is, do we leave that petrol because we actually use petrol, so that's a means that we can bring in oil and petrol, or do we logically, reasonably change that to diesel because we need to get the diesel off this platform anyway? We have absolutely no use for diesel on this platform, unfortunately. I wish there was a generator that was a diesel generator. And hopefully they will introduce that to the game, because that logically would produce CO2, but it would be a use for diesel, which we do not have. The only use for diesel we have in the game, as far as I can tell, is your boat. So I guess you can create, maybe there's a couple grenades that, no, I think that's all just petrol. So anyway, the discussion pattern is, is there a need to convert what we have as petrol now over to diesel, because that gives us the means and methodology of getting diesel off the platform into a useful something, the boat, or reasonably do we just leave it that way, because if we ever have to bring petrol in, it's already set up and maybe that's the more logical choice. All right, so off we go. We will vacate the platform because we have accomplished everything we intended to do here. We know the diesel works because we actually did the transfer of diesel. We can presume, I know that's a horrible word, but we can presume that the oil also works because we did them all at the same time. So if one of them swapped and now is working, that should mean logically that that this one is working as well. So we're going to make that presumption anyway. What I do want to do, which it will be, so this is kind of going to be the end of this particular, 1 or 2, 3, 4 parts, I think it looked like. So that's the end of really the oil delivery series, because I think we have indeed accomplished what we intended to do. So the next series will be really the next seeds. And so what I will do is from here, excuse me, is head back to Black Vein Station, refill my oil. Now that I am officially a tanker, so the OCD in me wants to actually put 2 rows of tanks onto the bow. I don't know how practical that is. What that would really mean is that I could do a lot more deliveries, because I'm really toying with the idea. It's silly, but going ahead and putting oil tanks and a distillation tower onto Sanctuary 37, which is the starting platform. And on the one side, it's silly because how often do I go there? So I've been there 3 times in this entire game, right? So this is actually my same game that I started when they gave me the release candidate. And of course the release candidate became early access release. They did a couple updates, but ultimately that was what was released. And then they've done I think 2 updates in the meantime. So effectively, this was the early access game that they released to us testing folks, us guinea pigs. And so I started over because now I had the ability to level fully in the game. So obviously I started there. That's the starting platform. So I started there. So that was my first time, and then I was back to refit the boat, to upgrade the boat. Where I had stripped everything out of Sanctuary, put it all back when I came back to do the upgrade to the boat. So I kind of using it as my dock, rebuild dock, refit dock. And then, of course, recently just did that again. So I didn't have to make really any changes. So the only changes I made there was to actually take down the wind turbines and put up more Lumimax. So that was the only change there. So that was my 3rd time back. So does it make sense? Is it silly to put oil onto that platform? Yes. The other thing that if I do the whole 12 oil thing or 18 oil thing or whatever, then the question is, do I rebuild all of the oil supply, the fuel supply depots, and have the ability to produce there? Now the downside to that is that, remember, that distillation tower is 60 kilowatts. So you have to realistically generate 60 kilowatts of power to be able to run that thing. So is it practical? Not really. That's an awful lot of energy. It's an awful lot of resources. Do I have the resources? Yeah. So that's not necessarily an argument, but in the end, the resources there are the fact that I am spending resources that are not necessarily a practical use of those resources. I not necessarily. Equalize. We are equalized. We are not full. Alright, so switch modes, which did absolutely nothing. So what I think I will do here is switch mode here and see what it does. There we go. But I'm still not pulling from the diesel tanks here. So to me, logically, anywhere in the path that says you are now output only should be logically going in there. And in this case, so I'm pulling stuff. Alright, so let's change that to equalize. Oh, so now that's working. So there's some weird dynamics that understanding how that, to me, logically, if there's anything that is in a single pipe, which is to say this is a single path, there's nowhere else these can go. So why are they not pulling in all of that diesel, you know, into the system here? And clearly not. So the diesel tanks here are trying to equalize, but in the end they are not. They're not pulling in permanently from this, which to me it should be doing all of that. So. That should be as well. So, you know, in my perspective is this should be forcing diesel onto the ship, and clearly not. So I don't know exactly why this is not working as intended. So to me this should be, so now it's reversed. So let's try this one. And it just stops. So, you know, clearly we've got 1,500 liters here that's not. So it's equalizing but not doing anything else. So let's see what this one, if we change this one. And no. So even that functionality is not working back up to the tanks above. So the question is, what's going on that is, you know, making this thing not function? So arguably we should be pulling stuff down from above and putting it in this tank. So when we put the last one onto the tank itself, then it goes. So we're pulling down from above and putting out here, which, okay. So we connect on to here, in this case, the last point, because I'm putting it into the series, right? I've got all the tanks interconnected, which means I should be shoving all the diesel fuel into this tank, and it's not. So that part's working. But rather than going to the ship, it's going back up, which makes absolutely no sense at all. Well, now we changed something, but now it stops. So this is the interconnector here, and my viewpoint is this should be just running solid. It should not be going back up there. It should be going onto the ship, because this says input only. So switch modes, input. Switch modes, input. Just do it all. Okay, so there should be absolutely no question in functional physics here. So we have proved that everything was set as equalized because we have moved diesel in both directions. So this is a total WTF. Really, truly. And the same thing here. I have diesel on the ship. Why isn't it moving? Output. Yeah, so clearly some cable physics is AFU at this point. You know, definitely needs, you know, things to happen. On the one side, does it matter anywhere but right here? So this interconnector, I have that extender, which connects onto the ship and connects onto these two tanks here. And that's my junction. So I'm basically filling 3 tanks, right? The ship's tank and these, but all the other diesel tanks on the ship are connected into the ship's ports, which of course are all interconnected. So, you know, whatever the hell is going on here, which makes absolutely no sense. Output only to me should be output only. It should be sucking everything out and go. There is an output only in the chain. Move. But no. So I have no idea what's happening here and why it's not working and why we can kind of circumvent everything and make it work, and then suddenly logically it's working again, but I don't know. Alright, so in the end, the goal here is to get diesel, in this case, off the platform onto the ship, which is where I can use it onto the boat. So I'm kind of working towards that end. So I don't think there's any real reason. Trying to troubleshoot a game which may be a game bug is kind of fruitless and pointless. So right now it's doing what I want it to do, and I'll probably end up doing several evolutions just to get all the diesel fuel onto the boat here. But so my thoughts are I disconnect this one because it's not working anyway. Well, I mean, it's working now. And then reconnect this, bring fuel down here as an input only to fill this tank, and then go into the ship again. So it might take a little while. So that one has very likely exhausted. Yes, it did. So we can reconnect here and see really what happens. And you know, if that, but no. So I mean, of course, there's only 4 diesel tanks up there, so maybe it's entirely, did we really go 8,000 liters? Was I really that low on the ship? And I don't think I was. So that's an interesting question. But let's, just for the sake of trial. Nope. Clearly there so why is this not flowing? It makes absolutely no sense. So again, no point in me whining and complaining on air here, so we'll go ahead and sign off because this is just troubleshooting for the sake of troubleshooting, and I'm guessing I'm troubleshooting a bug. So oops. And then how do you even explain this to say, okay, my very, very complex piping system on Exodus is not working, fix it, right? So anyway, probably going to end up being rather fruitless. So, with all that having been said, I'll end on a slightly frustrating note because clearly not worky. Although maybe there are some workarounds that we'll play with, but we'll do that off camera. No reason to listen or to force you guys to listen to me growling and snarling, which is gonna start shortly. All right, this is Kenty Tiger signing off. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time.